Welcome everybody to the Payroll Solutions for Accounting Professionals live payroll Q&A. We've got a few people here and hopefully they're not shy and can ask questions. So let's get started. Cheryl, did you want to ask your question?
Yes, so basically, Shannon, I'm looking for someone to work with that supports Pennsylvania. As I stated, I have several people who live in Florida, and basically they have companies that are multi-state, and they do a lot of New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area, and basically it's just finding a good person to refer that to, like you were saying a little bit more. If you could expand more on how Pennsylvania, divides up their particular payroll and why it's so difficult to find a service provider to work in that state.
Yeah, Pennsylvania has local jurisdictions and county jurisdictions, and a lot of, or some of the smaller payroll services don't support some states, and Pennsylvania is just one of the ones that's difficult to find somebody that you can outsource to, because jurisdiction is not only based off of where the employer is located and the physical work is performed, but it also goes with where the localities where the employees all live. And before we started recording, Cheryl had mentioned that she wasn't a fan of ADP or Paychex or some of the other companies because they're not affordable for a really small business that's just getting started, maybe hiring their first employee, or they just have a few and their payroll is pretty simple. And for those, if they really can't afford it and you want to monitor the payroll, take a look at Paychex. They can handle really simple payrolls like S-Corp owners, and if you don't have benefits, they're one of the best ones, and they're really inexpensive. And if you sign up to become a partner with Patriot, you get a little bit better pricing on your monthly payroll service. Did I answer all your questions, Cheryl?
Yes, so I guess since we're talking about some of the smaller ones, what is your preference? Like you said, I have a few clients that are like solopreneurs, or they have one employee, and there's Patriot, there's Gusto, there's Sure Payroll. I mean, what are your pros and cons on the three smaller options web-based?
Of the ones that you've mentioned, Patriot is my go-to if I'm recommending a smaller company. Now, personally, I've not had a good experience with Gusto, but I have heard from other professionals that their service and their quality has improved since I had my experience. And full disclosure, my experience with Gusto was in 2015, 2016. So it's been a little bit, but I do know that Gusto does integrate with QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop. And from what I've seen, it's a pretty decent integration, at least with QuickBooks Online. I haven't seen a new integration with Desktop. I've not had any personal experience with Sure Payroll.
Okay.
So hopefully that answered your question.
That did, thank you.
All right. Cherie, did you want to ask your question?
Hi.
Hi. Oh, we get your face and everything. Awesome.
Okay, so my question was how to get clients when you first starting out, especially the trust there and you're a newbie.
Well, there's it depends on who your target customer is, because, you know, if you want to work locally, then I would highly recommend going to local networking events and just getting out there. Every chance you get out there, just be seen. And that doesn't always work for everybody. It marginally worked for me when I was getting started. I have my first 2 customers I still have. One left and came back, but I've had 1 bookkeeping and payroll client since 2005. And I have 1 from my very first, I went to a BNI visitor day. BNI stands for Business Network International. And I went to a visitor day. I got a payroll client in 2008, and I still have them. They've been a customer straight through for the last 11 years. But more recently, I decided who my target, I really niched down and figured out who I wanted to work with, which I always thought was a luxury when I was first getting started, because I didn't know, I needed the money. You know, I got let go from my job at a car dealership. I was a single parent and I needed to make money. So I just took anybody and everybody, and I had some really interesting experiences that I never want to have again, because they were not who I wanted to work with. But if you can figure out, you know, sit down, and if you haven't already figured out to do your ideal client avatar, where you give them a name, you know, you're like, okay, they're this age, these are their hobbies, and I've got a worksheet somewhere that I can share with you in the group later. But if you can figure out, or just get an idea, okay, I have experience working with chiropractors or construction or restaurants or whatever, and say that's who you want to work with, then figure out where they hang out and go there, whether it's in person, on social media, if it could be Facebook, it could be LinkedIn, and just go to the groups that they're in and start answering questions. You know, if they're like, I'm having this problem or whatever, and just give them a couple of solutions. And it's just giving your knowledge that you have freely without expecting anything in return. And, you know, just always, you know, be approachable and say, you know, here's what I think. Let me know if I'm off base, or, you know, feel free to message me if you have more questions.
Okay.
So, and do you have a website?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You know, make sure that if you figure out who you want to work with, that your website kind of speaks to them.
Okay.
And make sure that they can find your contact information. You know, if you want everybody to be funneled through to your email, make sure your email address is out there. So you know, or if you want them to give you a call, make sure your phone number is out there. If you want them to set up an appointment, make sure your calendar link is out there so that they can do it really easily without a lot of back and forth. You know, but, you know, having your email address and your phone number out there are going to lead to getting junk mail and spam phone calls. So, you know, if it's a phone number that you want them to call, you know, look at getting a third-party phone number that is just for your website, so that you'll know where the calls are coming from. So, did that answer your question?
Oh, yeah. And the next question was the pricing.
Pricing.
Yes.
There's a lot of different schools of thought and experts that only deal with pricing. But I've put, for my bookkeeping stuff, I've put my pricing on my website, which was trial and error, and I'm still playing with it. So I think, and I've been in business for a lot of years, you're gonna come up, you're always changing your pricing or figuring out what your philosophy is. But typically the rule of thumb that I've seen talked about a lot lately is a percentage of revenue. And that primarily works best with companies over $500,000. So if they're under $500,000, you are still kind of guessing and playing with your pricing. But I know a lot of people disagree with this, but when I found personally, when I put my pricing on my website, I got a lot fewer calls that started with, what do you charge? Because when that's the first question that somebody asks me, my knee-jerk response is, if that's your first question, you can't afford me. But, you know, and sometimes they could, but how do you don't know anything about their company, and they don't want to tell you the information a lot of times. From what my experience was, they don't want to tell me any information about their company. They just want me to price it.
Exactly.
So I put my pricing on my website. You choose your business structure, and then you choose your revenue, and then I've got, you know, do you want this, do you want that different stuff. And I changed it in, I changed my pricing structure in June last year, but it took me a while to get my website updated. And my website went live with that in December around Christmas. And it's just, I've had a really good experience with it, because you're not going to get people that are like, well, my, you know, their monthly fee comes up to $500. And they're like, well, I don't want to pay that much. Okay, well, we've got this menu list of things here. What do you want me to not do? What do you want to do yourself? Because everything's assigned a dollar value.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's not a payroll related question, but because for me, pricing payroll was always easy. It's this flat fee, and it's this much per employee, and this much for every additional jurisdiction. And there's a setup fee based on whether they start January 1st, the beginning of a quarter, or the middle of a quarter. So that's just always been, I mean, even when I was brand new, that was my pricing. My pricing has changed a lot since I started my company full time in 2010, but it's always been that set structure where it was, I mean, everything had a value. And when I changed my bookkeeping part of my business to that, it just made everything so much easier. Because, you know, otherwise you're like trying to figure out, okay, that's going to take me this long. I'm going to bill this much per hour. Well, something takes, but then when you get efficient, you're not making as much if you're billing hourly, because you're punishing yourself for becoming efficient and knowing what you're doing.
Right.
And, you know, on the other side, if you're Googling a lot, or, you know, you're researching to figure out what you need to know to do your job, then you feel guilty for charging for the research, because you're like, I should know this. So either value pricing or revenue pricing is what I would recommend to figure out. And there are experts in those fields, and I by no means proclaim myself to be very knowledgeable in either of those fields. I just know what has worked and what hasn't worked for me.
Okay.
So, Sandy and Michelle just joined us. Did either of you guys have any questions you wanted to ask?
No, I just finally got on Facebook and saw you had a live, so I said, let me join you and listen in.
Well, thank you, Sandy. I'm glad.
Sure, always willing to support. I literally just logged in, so I didn't know earlier. Sorry about that, my late attendance.
Hey, no problem. I'm just always glad that there are people that join and want to talk. Let's see, Michelle asked a question in chat. How much do I usually charge to set up payroll? It is, if it's a January 1st or a brand new payroll setup where they have not had payroll in the past, the setup is $250 to get them in the system. I charge $350 if we start at the beginning of a quarter, because we have to, you know, at least do a journal entry or get all the previous quarters in the system. And I charge $450 if we start in the middle of a quarter, because there's a lot more stuff involved with starting at the beginning of a quarter or at the middle of a quarter than it is even at the beginning of a quarter, because you have to make sure everything is in there correctly to not only get your quarterly reports done correctly at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter, but you also have all your year end that you need to consider. Plus, you also have to take into consideration what needs to be done for the work comp audit, because those run for very specific periods of time. It's not very often where work comp audit runs January 1st to January 1st. I've had one person who I've ever had that is their work comp time period. Usually it's, you know, their July 17th or August 10th or February 7th or February 7th or, you know, whatever. It's just whenever they signed their policy, whenever they hired their first employee. So, and around July and August seems to be my most common time where people have hired their employees, because this is the time where I have the most work comp audits that I'm doing for my customers. Does anybody else have any questions that are in the group? All right, Simon.
I actually do have a question. Do you primarily only do you work by project, or can people hire you on an hourly basis for consulting?
I do consulting, yes. And speaking of projects, I just helped Sandy work through a cleanup where there was a big payroll mess. And so I do assist with payroll cleanup in a larger cleanup project and regular ongoing payroll. But I do consulting. I'll help if you want to do your own payroll, or you want to manage your client's payroll yourself, but you're not sure if things are set up correctly, or if there are other things that you need to do. I do consulting for that, just so that you know everything is done and set up correctly.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know as well. Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. All right, we've got a little bit time left. Oh, Michelle just asked another question in chat. And I just lost it here. Okay. If I wanted to outsource payroll to you in the future, how would that work? Would you work with the client directly or through me? And the answer, Michelle, is yes. I will, depending on what you want, I will work directly with you or directly with the client. And the way I do that is, if you want me to work through you as your team member, then I bill everything directly to you with your affiliate discount already added to the invoice. And any client communication goes through you, or if you want me to contact them directly for any reason, every single time I contact your customer where you are the main point of contact, you get copied on it. And if it's a phone call, you get a follow-up email that you're copied on, that I also send to your customer directly. And if you want me to work directly with a customer, you know, maybe you got somebody that only wanted payroll and that isn't something that you want to even be involved in, you refer them to me, and I deal with them directly all the time. And quarterly, I send out an affiliate commission check. And right now, your discount and your commission is 20% of the base and setup fee. Does that answer your question, Michelle? All right, she said yes. So we've got just a few more minutes. So I am going to go to the Facebook group and answer a few questions live. All right, so we have a question here. When payday falls on a weekend, do you pay employees on the Monday after or the Friday before? And that's usually a question that is asked because the payday is a set day where you get, it's a bi-monthly payroll where it's the 1st and the 15th or the 15th, you know, just the payday is set on a set date of the month, not a day of the week. Typically, if payroll would fall on Saturday, the payday would be bumped to Friday. And if it would fall on Sunday, then the payday is on the following Monday. Typically, though, what I usually recommend people doing is if it falls on the weekend, just pay them on Friday. But you also have to do what the employee handbook says, because that overrides anything. Having a handbook helps you with things clearly defined, really helps you as the payroll person from making mistakes. So whenever you start doing somebody's payroll, always get a copy of their employee handbook, because it'll line out for you what their paid time off policy is, their holiday policy. You know, if payday falls on the weekend, what day are they expecting to get paid? It lays out a lot of different things for you. Oh, yes, and I just saw my answer that I put on there before where I mentioned the Department of Labor also has guidelines that you need to follow. So you first have to find out what the rules are for your state and put them in your employee handbook, and then do what the employee handbook says. There's one more question that I wanted to answer today, and the person that asked the question was referring specifically to a restaurant, but there's a lot of different industries and reasons why you might have short-term workers, and they wanted to know if there was a minimum amount of time where people work for a company before they have to be put on payroll. And as soon as they clock in and begin working, even if they only work a minute or 5 minutes or an hour or a week, they're on payroll. So that's just, there's a lot of times where people are like, but they only worked, or they only did this, they only did that. Well, or can't we just pay them as a 1099? No, you hired them, you had them fill out a W-4 and I-9 and whatever other documents that the employer requires, and they're an employee. They get put on payroll. And sometimes it's more expensive to put them on payroll than it is than they actually get paid. But that doesn't matter. We have to follow all the local jurisdictional laws and everything. And yeah, it really sucks when you hire an employee and they only come in for a couple hours or whatever. You know, personal experience I've had is I've hired people and they filled out all the paperwork, but they've never shown up to work. In those cases, you don't put them on payroll because they never did any wage earning time for your company. So I think if nobody else live has any questions, those were all the questions from the group that I wanted to make sure we discussed today. So we will end.
Before you end it, Sandy, you and I haven't talked about this, but I do want to get more information. If you can email me about the affiliate program that you have. I think I think I would like to be a part of that for some of my clients, but I want to make sure I have a good, solid handle on that. I don't know if you have a one-pager. I don't know if you have something I could read up on it, or maybe we can just chat offline. But I wanted to, before we end the call, I wanted to make sure I take the time to tell you that I am very interested.
Okay. Because I kept thinking I wanted to focus and do other things. And I'm like, I always felt like I have to do this and then I can focus on payroll, or I need to do this and then I can focus on payroll. All of a sudden one day I'm like, you know what, forget it. I'm just going to focus on payroll because that's what I want to do. So my website is currently under development. Hopefully it will be ready here really soon. I've got my assistant working on a one-page, like a affiliate pricing sheet that I can start posting and sending out to people. But really simply, you email me, call me, text me, Facebook message me that you're interested. And if once either you have somebody that you want to set up right away, or you just refer somebody to me, I just need to know that they came from you. And then I can track them in my system to make sure that you get your affiliate commissions. But so basically, as long as they're my customer, you get 20%, either a 20% discount if I bill you, or a 20% commission check if I bill the customer directly. So, and the 20% is only on the base fee and the setup fee. It's not on the per employee fee or the additional jurisdiction fee. Because I charge $50 for every additional jurisdictional report we need to file. And that's per filing, not per month or per anything. It's just, so if it's a quarterly report that needs to be filed, it's $50. If it's per quarter. If it's an annual report that needs to be filed, it's $50 per year. But soon, Sandy, I promise I'm gonna have some of that information available.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.